and welcome. So today I have a fun video for you. So I'm going to be creating a mythical beast and we're going to be doing it with some random prompts. So that's enough talk. Let's pull out the art supplies, have some fun and create an artwork. So I'm just going to put some random prompts into this custom generator on Jazza's app. Now I'm going to pick a few different things here, probably like body size, maybe texture. I think this will be really fun and random. So let's put in number of legs. We can put 2 legs. Let's have another one. Let's have a wild card, maybe 3 legs and maybe no legs. So that's that list done. So we're going to add a texture here and let's just say scales for something interesting, maybe slime. Let's make some really interesting ones. So maybe a rock texture. Maybe we could have sort of like a wooden texture. I don't know what I would do with that, but I'm sure I could add it. Of course, why not skin? Because that could probably potentially be horrifying. And why not a mix? So I'll pick like maybe 2 or so different ones that I could add, like a mix of them. All right, so we've got how many legs? We've got texture. Let's add a new thing, maybe like a cool aspect or like something about it. So what should I call that? A feature. All right, so a feature, we could have wings, we could have 2 heads, 2 tails, sharp teeth, but that's a given, I'm guessing. Maybe we could add a long body. That could be interesting. Maybe even frills of some sort. I don't know. I think that's good. Now I want to add sort of a body type. So let's just say bulky, lean, muscular, balanced. Yeah, that looks good. Now we're going to add another list for say an animal to be loosely based off of animal. Add term. So let's just put in lion because that would be interesting, and we'll put lizard, cat. Let's put an interesting animal up here, something different. How about a pangolin? That could be very cool. And possibly a bird. And of course, just to add a little bit of a little bit of more interest to it, how about a chimera or chimera? So basically a mix of 2. Now I think that's pretty good. So why don't we go and do a sort of mix of these? All right, so we've edited it. Now let's do this custom generator and see what kind of creature we're gonna get. Go. Okay, so the animal is based roughly off a pangolin. That's really interesting because I've never done a creature like that. It's bulky, it's got frills, it's got 3 legs and scales, which is quite convenient because pangolins sort of have that sort of scaly texture. So yeah, I think this is going to be very interesting, and an animal with 3 legs. That's gonna be a little bit of a challenge to see how I can sort of balance that. All right, let's do it. Let's make a creature. So to begin, I'm actually going to start this off with some small sort of thumbnail sketches. A lot of the time I will sort of dive straight into doing the big artwork because I'm really excited to get an artwork done. However, I really do feel like I want to experiment more and just like sort of flesh out the ideas of the illustration before I actually go into making it. So I did a few pencil sketches here and there, trying to test out different looks, and I also tried a few different sort of ways to draw the frills on this creature. At first I had sort of more fish or dragon-like frills, and then later I sort of like changed it into almost like soft, dainty, curly, sort of rounded frills, and I actually really like the look of that. I think it looks pretty cool. Now, starting on the sketch for the full illustration, I'm actually sketching on 2 pieces of A4 paper which are sticky taped together. I prefer to sketch on a separate piece of paper than the actual paper that I'm going to be doing the illustration on, because I really like to sort of push hard with that pencil and do really messy sketch lines, and this allows me to do that while actually still preserving the paper that the artwork is going to be on. Now how I do that is I actually get my light box out and I trace the line art on that way. This actually really is helpful because I get to keep my original sketch, while also if I make a mistake or something like that, I can easily just redo it and I don't lose the original sketch. Now when designing this mythical beast, I actually decided to have him up on a tree for a few reasons, mainly because it would look cool. I absolutely love drawing trees, it's really fun for me, but also a lot of pangolin species do live up in trees and climb trees, so that's why I decided to do that, because, well, he would just look so majestic perched up there in the branches. Now onto the inking phase. I actually used a few inking liners for this, a 0.2 and a 0.8. This is because I wanted two different sizes to sort of do the inking with. One that was really fine and I could do like lots of little details, and the other really thick and bold so that I could have a nice sort of thick solidified outline that would really help sort of capture the shape of the creature. And to be completely honest, I was not really looking forward to outlining all of those scales on the pangolin, because actually looking it up, pangolins do have scales. They're not like a scale-like texture, they're the only mammals with real scales. So I thought that that was a bit of an interesting idea, even though I'm getting off topic here. But yeah, it was kind of very sort of finicky for me to go around all of those scales, but I really wanted to sort of push myself and do all of the details as well as I could to make a really cool illustration. And to be completely honest, I'm very happy I did that, because I really loved the way the scales turned out. So now onto the coloring phase. I had a lot of fun with this part. I absolutely love coloring in my illustrations. I find it the most relaxing part of the illustration. I can sometimes find the inking and the line art to be pretty stressful, because it's scary to actually, you know, mess up your illustration when you've spent so much time on it. But the coloring phase is just so therapeutic to me. It's really fun, and I have a lot of fun sort of experimenting with sort of highlights and shadows and different colors. It's really good and I enjoy it. So I started off with the scales because this was the part of the illustration that I really wanted to make sure would stand out and sort of be the emphasis of the illustration, if that makes sense. I really wanted to spend as much time on those scales as I could, and I really did sort of spend a lot more time than usual on an illustration on this, so I'm actually very happy. But anyways, so I started off just having a bit of a layer of E29 burnt umber. Now this was the sort of base color for all of the scales of this illustration. I wanted this to be the main color, but we also had to add a few different colors over the top, obviously, to shade and highlight this thing. So to shade it, I actually went with BV08, which is blue violet, because I really wanted some purple undertones in that brown. And just to deepen it a little bit more, I put in some B39 Prussian blue, because I just love shading with Prussian blue. It's a really nice sort of deep blue color, and it just adds a little bit of life to the shading compared to, say, something like gray or black. Now, to actually add the highlights onto this, I actually went over with some Y17 golden yellow, because I really wanted some like sort of warm yellow highlights in this to sort of counteract the blues and purples. And I also put a little bit of carob cocoa over the top, which is a slightly lighter brown color, just to sort of blend those dark brown colors into the yellow colors for the highlights. And I really love the way that those scales turned out with the blending. I feel like I spent most of my time on this illustration on those scales, but I had so much fun. And oh yeah, I also added a little bit of white gel pen over the top just to add a more crisp highlight in this, and just sort of define the edges of the scales and make the highlights pop a little bit more. And I just love the way they turned out. I love standing back and looking at this illustration because it is quite a bit bigger than my usual illustrations. It's actually twice the size of my usual illustrations. And when I stood back from this, it just like, I don't know, I feel like I wowed myself a little bit just with the shading of the scales because I guess I spent so much time on them. Now with the frills of this creature, I really wanted to have a sort of teal look to them. I felt like it would just sort of blend in with the background really nicely, but add a bit of pop of color to that brown that I really liked. So I actually started off with a layer of YG41 pale cobalt green, which is a sort of nice sort of greeny, yellowy, bluey kind of color. And then after this, I went over with a bit of BG34 horizon green. And also for the shadows, I did a bit of BG49 dark blue. And now these are some really nice sort of tealy, greeny, bluey colors. The shadow sort of inches a little bit more towards blue, which I like because I added a little extra blue in the shadows of the other parts, so I decided to have a little bit more of a bluiness in the shadows of the frills. Now I still wanted to add a bit of an accent color. I felt like just having two colors on this creature was a little bit boring, and I wanted to have a bit of a pattern on those scales. So as you can see, I added a bit of a sort of pattern on them, and that was with VO9 Violet. I love purple, it's one of my favorite colors, and that's why I decided to add that into the illustration. And I really love the look of the purple sort of veins on it. I think it looks pretty cool. The tree was pretty straightforward. I basically just had a big layer of E25 Carib Cocoa, and then I doubled that up with some sort of textures of my burnt umber marker, just to sort of allude to a bit of a sort of a barky texture on the tree. And then I also went over with W7, and then I went back with the Carib Cocoa to sort of blend it all in, and then I sort of used the same markers over and over, sort of just like working in the shadows and the highlights. And as for highlights, I actually went back over that tree with some sort of like pale yellow colors and soft greenish colors, just to try and sort of have those colors in the highlights and shadows the same on the tree. Now here comes the fun bit. I actually was really tempted to use my Copic airbrush system to do the background of this, and I couldn't help myself. I had to do it, and I am so glad I did. Now to mask off the illustration, because I only wanted to airbrush on the background, I'm actually using some Express It masking film, which is really good stuff because you can stick it over your illustration, cut around the areas that you don't want to have masking film on, and then peel it off. And it's very slightly sticky, so when you peel it off, it actually won't damage your illustration at all. And it is so useful and so much easier than what I used to do for masking, which was like masking tape and paper and that kind of thing, which was pretty risky. So I'm really glad I got that masking film because it is a lifesaver with the Copic airbrush system. All I'm using to cut around it is my sort of craft knife, X-Acto knife type thing, and I'm being very careful not to sort of cut through the paper. I only really want to cut through the sort of masking film that's on the top. So I'm only actually using two colors in this background, and I really wanted to sort of airbrush in a way that looked like it was as if the sunlight was sort of peering through the trees. So I wanted to have a slightly bluish, slightly greenish look, as if the light from the sky is sort of going through those trees and sort of like carrying a bit of that color through. And that's a great thing about the Copic airbrush system, is that you can control how light and how dark it is a lot easier than say just drawing it with markers. It also uses way less ink, just saying. But those two markers that I actually used were BG49 dark blue, which was a color that I used previously in the illustration, as well as BG53 ice mint, which is a brand new marker that I have bought completely for this illustration because I really wanted to pick out a really nice sort of bluey green color that would work well for the background. And I have to say, I am so glad that I got that marker because it just worked out so well. The colors blended really nicely, and it really looks like a sort of a blurry bokeh almost look to a forest. So anyways, here is the final results, and I absolutely love this illustration so much. This is probably like my favorite illustration I have ever made, and I am so glad that I was able to show you guys this illustration. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. So there's one last thing this mythical creature needs, and that is a name. but I'm not gonna name it. I'm actually gonna leave it up to you in the comments below. So please comment below what you think this creature should be named. I'm gonna be hanging out in the comments, reading your comments, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone.